The galaxy was old. Civilizations had risen and fallen like waves in an endless ocean. In the center of this history was something most species refused to even name aloud: a trial, a challenge, a nightmare. They called it the test. It was not a simple exam. It was not a battle that one could win with ships or armies. It was a creation of an ancient and unknown race, designed to measure the full limits of mind, body, and spirit. Some said it was a machine. Others said it was alive. All that mattered was this: no species that entered had ever passed. The Varnuk tried first. Their empire of steel and logic collapsed within hours of facing the test. The Kale followed, strong and fearless, but they lasted only 3 days before begging for mercy. Entire fleets had been destroyed, entire species broken. Over centuries, the test was locked away. The Galactic Council ordered its records buried, its location hidden, and its name whispered only in fear. But time has a way of bringing back forgotten things. When humans entered the galactic stage, they did not arrive with power. They had small colonies, weak ships, and little respect from the greater empires. To the older races, humans were reckless children who laughed too loud, argued too much, and dared to go where they were not invited. But humans had one thing the galaxy did not understand: curiosity. It was curiosity that brought Dr. Harris, a young American scientist working with the Colonial Academy, to the old archives. He was not searching for power. He was simply digging through ancient files, following trails of myths. And there he found a sealed record, a fragment of data about a universal test. At first, he thought it was just a story. But the more he read, the more the shadows grew. Notes about species vanishing. Reports of impossible trials. Entire empires erased after attempting it. Harris could have closed the file. He could have ignored it. But he did not. Instead, he carried it to Captain Miller, commander of the human exploratory fleet. Miller was a soldier, a man who had fought in Earth's Navy before joining space service. He listened carefully, then asked one simple question. Where is it? The galaxy would later say this was the moment everything changed. The aliens feared the test, humans treated it like a challenge. The human fleet located the system. A dead star surrounded by strange energy signatures. Old warning satellites still circled it, repeating the same phrase in 1,000 languages: do not enter. When the message reached the Galactic Council that humans had found the location, panic spread. The Zern ambassador shouted in horror, do they not know what they are touching? The Varnuk elder whispered, the test is death. They are walking into their own graves. But humans were not afraid. To them, it sounded like training. Captain Miller called his crew together. Sarah Johnson, pilot and strategist, laughed when she heard the warnings. So it's a test? Good. We've done tests all our lives. James Carter, ground soldier, cracked his knuckles. If this thing is so scary, let's see if it scares us too. To the crew, this was not suicide. It was an opportunity. If the galaxy feared something, humans wanted to face it. The first human ship crossed into the system. The moment they entered, strange energy wrapped around them. Stars vanished. Time twisted. They were pulled into a chamber that did not belong to normal space. The test had accepted their challenge. The ship's crew looked around at a massive hall of stone and metal, larger than cities, floating in endless black. Strange symbols glowed on the walls. Doors opened by themselves, as if inviting them inside. The first stage had begun. Back in the galaxy, entire governments turned their eyes toward the humans. Spy satellites, hidden channels, secret broadcasts all focused on the reckless newcomers. Billions across the stars watched the humans take their first steps into the trial that had destroyed empires. Some expected screams within minutes. Others expected the human ship to vanish instantly. But none expected what truly happened. The humans laughed. Sarah smirked and said, "This looks like a training maze. We did harder runs in basic camp." James rolled his shoulders and replied, "Then let's warm up." The aliens watching could not believe it. They had seen species enter this chamber and fall to madness, crushed by the very air. But the humans treated it like practice. And in that moment, a whisper began to spread across the galaxy. If they survive this, nothing will ever stop them. Captain Miller looked at his crew and gave a sharp nod. "All right, team. This is just a test. And you know what we do with tests. We pass them." The doors opened. The first trial waited inside. And as the humans stepped forward, the galaxy held its breath, remembering every species that had entered before, and never returned. But this time was different. This time, the humans were here. The doors closed behind them with a sound like thunder. The humans were sealed inside the first chamber of the test. It did not look dangerous at first. The walls were smooth metal, glowing with faint blue lines. The floor shifted under their boots, changing shapes like liquid stone. Strange lights moved above, watching, recording. Sarah raised her eyebrows. "This feels like a simulation room. Like something you'd see in a video game." James Carter gave a grin. "Good. Then it'll be fun." Captain Miller kept his expression calm, though inside he was alert. He had seen battlefields where overconfidence killed men faster than bullets. Still, he trusted his crew. He also knew that humans had one strength most species could not understand: adaptability. A deep voice echoed through the chamber. It was not a voice of flesh. It was something mechanical, ancient, and full of power. Trial 1, the maze of shifting paths. The floor changed instantly. Solid ground broke into pieces, leaving narrow bridges hanging over endless darkness. Walls rose from the ground, twisting into a labyrinth. Aliens watching through hidden channels leaned forward. This was the trial that had broken the Kale, the warrior race once considered unstoppable. The Kale had been trapped in endless loops until they starved and went mad. No one had ever escaped the maze of shifting paths. But the humans looked at it differently. Sarah studied the moving walls with sharp eyes. "It's like an obstacle course." James laughed. "Reminds me of boot camp. Only with less yelling." Captain Miller gave the order. "Stay together. Mark every turn. And remember, if it moves, we move faster." And so the humans began. The maze shifted. Bridges crumbled. Walls slammed down like hammers. But humans ran, leapt, and adjusted without fear. Sarah used chalk to mark paths, but when the wall erased her marks, she began carving symbols with her knife instead. James carried heavy packs, using them to jam doors before they closed. When the ground shook, he shouted jokes to keep spirits high. "Come on. Is this all you've got? My grandma's garden was scarier than this." The chamber's AI responded by making the maze faster, sharper, more dangerous. To the alien audience, it looked like madness. The Kale had cried in despair. The Varnock had frozen in logic loops, unable to choose a path. But the humans adapted like water finding a riverbed. Every time the maze changed, they laughed, cursed, and changed with it. And then, after only 3 hours, they found the exit. Billions across the galaxy gasped. No species had ever escaped the first trial. The humans stood there, sweaty and tired but smiling. Sarah slapped James on the shoulder. "Well, that was a workout." James grinned. "Best warm-up I've had in years." But the test was not finished. The second chamber opened. It was darker than the first, filled with strange machines that hummed like beating hearts. The walls were alive with shifting lights. At the center of the room, a figure waited. It was tall, armored, and glowing with energy. The deep voice spoke again. "Trial 2, the Guardian of Silence. The figure moved. Its steps were heavy, shaking the ground. In one hand it carried a blade of pure light. In the other, a shield like a moving star. The aliens watching grew tense. This guardian had broken entire fleets before. It was said to adapt to any weapon, to learn every attack. It was impossible to defeat. But James only raised his fists and laughed. Finally. Something to hit. Captain Miller's eyes narrowed. No one rush. Test it first. We fight smart, not blind. The humans began the battle. The Guardian struck with lightning speed. Sarah rolled aside, firing her rifle. The blast hit, but the shield absorbed it like water. James charged forward, swinging his hammer. Sparks flew as the hammer met the Guardian's blade. The aliens watching whispered in disbelief. No one had ever lasted longer than a few minutes against the Guardian. But the humans were not just fighting, they were enjoying it. Every attack they tried failed, but instead of despair, they kept experimenting. Sarah switched tactics, targeting the floor to make the Guardian slip. James taunted it, drawing its attacks so others could study its movements. After an hour, they found a weakness. The Guardian's shield absorbed direct attacks, but when Sarah bounced a shot off the wall, the energy slipped behind the shield. The Guardian staggered. Captain Miller's voice was sharp. Focus on angles. Don't fight head-on. Outsmart it. Together, the crew adapted. They used reflections, tricks, and teamwork. The Guardian roared, its blade flashing, but little by little the humans forced it down. At last, James struck a final blow, smashing his hammer into the Guardian's chest. Sparks exploded. The great machine collapsed into silence. The voice returned. Trial 2 complete. Across the galaxy, shock turned into fear. The Kale had fallen in the maze. The Varnak had broken at logic puzzles. Even the great Serene Empire had been destroyed by the Guardian. But humans had passed both trials and they were laughing about it. Sarah brushed dust from her shoulder. That was fun. What's next? Captain Miller looked at the glowing doorway ahead. His face was calm, but his eyes were sharp. Next stage. And don't forget, this is still just the beginning. The humans stepped forward into the third chamber. The door closed behind them, and the galaxy trembled at the thought of what would happen next. For the first time in history, the test was not terrifying its challengers. It was being used by humans, as practice. The galaxy had always treated the test as a curse. Entire nations had vanished inside it. The very mention of its name caused silence in council chambers. For thousands of years, it stood as a warning of what not to touch. And yet, humans were inside, moving from trial to trial as if they were on a weekend adventure. Every major power now watched them. In secret rooms and high council halls, alien leaders gathered before glowing screens, their eyes fixed on the human crew. Broadcasts from spy drones carried the impossible images, humans laughing inside the very place that once shattered empires. The Varnak elder slammed his claw against the table. This is madness. The maze destroyed our kind. The Guardian crushed fleets. How are these humans not broken? The Zern ambassador shook his scaled head. They treat it like a game. Inside the third chamber, the humans faced the next challenge. The room stretched like an endless canyon, filled with towers of stone rising from black water. Bridges of light connected the towers, but each step caused the bridges to flicker and vanish. The deep voice announced. Trial 3, the illusion of despair. Sarah stared at the endless towers. Looks like a puzzle platformer. James cracked a grin. I used to jump rooftops back on Earth. Piece of cake. Captain Miller studied the glowing paths. He knew it was a trap designed to crush the spirit, not the body. But humans had something the test had never measured before: stubbornness. All right, Miller said firmly. We move tower by tower. No one quits, no matter how hopeless it looks. As they moved, the bridges flickered out beneath them. James nearly fell into the black water, but Sarah caught him by the arm. They laughed even as danger surrounded them. The illusions grew worse. Towers shifted farther apart, forcing impossible jumps. The water below showed visions, families crying, earth burning, voices whispering, "You will fail." For most species, these illusions had been the end. They collapsed in despair, begging for death. The Serene Empire had lost their entire royal guard in this very trial. But the humans cursed at the visions. James shouted into the void, "Shut up. We've seen worse in New York traffic." Sarah spit into the water. "Nice try. But we don't scare easy." And step by step, laughing and struggling, they crossed the canyon of illusions. The galaxy could not understand it. On distant worlds, people gathered in public halls to watch the secret broadcasts. Billions of eyes followed the humans as if watching a myth unfold. Some felt awe. Some felt terror. A few whispered prayers. One council member finally spoke aloud what many feared. If they finish this, if they pass every stage, they will be unstoppable. The chamber grew silent. Back inside the test, the humans reached the last tower. The final bridge appeared before them, flickering with unstable light. If they missed it, they would fall into the endless black. Captain Miller looked at his team. "Together. On my mark." They ran as one, the bridge fading beneath their feet. At the last second, they leapt. For a breathless moment, they were suspended above nothing. Then they landed safely on the final tower. The illusions vanished. The canyon dissolved into light. The voice spoke again, deeper than before. "Trial 3 complete." The humans cheered. Sarah threw her arms into the air. "We did it." James laughed, out of breath. "Best workout I've had all week." But the galaxy shivered. In a dark chamber on the Varnic homeworld, the elder whispered to his council. "Do you see it? They do not fear pain. They do not fear despair. What do we call a species that takes our nightmares, and uses them for training?" On another world, a young Zern soldier asked his commander, "What happens if they finish the test?" The commander only shook his head. "Then the galaxy changes forever." The fourth chamber opened before the humans. A vast storm of fire and lightning swirled inside, ripping apart the ground, tearing the air itself. Sarah whistled low. "Now that looks dangerous." James tightened his grip on his hammer. "Good. I was getting bored." Captain Miller's eyes narrowed. He could feel the weight of history pressing down on them. But he also felt something else, the thrill of proving the galaxy wrong. "All right, team," he said. "One step at a time. Let's see what else this test has." The humans marched into the storm, their laughter echoing behind them. And across the stars, billions held their breath. For the first time, the test was no longer the galaxy's greatest terror. Now, the galaxy's terror was humanity. The storm swallowed them whole. Lightning tore the skies, fire ripped the ground, and winds screamed like dying beasts. The fourth trial was not a place, it was chaos itself. Sarah struggled to keep her footing as the ground shifted beneath her. "Feels like walking inside a hurricane." James laughed, even while shielding his face from burning sparks. "I wrestled worse storms back in Texas." Captain Miller pushed forward, his voice steady over the storm. "Eyes open. Watch each other's backs." To the galaxy, this trial was legend. The Kale never entered it. The Varnic called it the world ender. Even the mighty Serene Empire had chosen death over facing it. Yet the humans marched deeper, adapting to the impossible as if it were another training mission. They found a path across the storm. Broken platforms floated in the void, each one crumbling the moment they touched it. Sarah leapt first, landing with precision. James followed, laughing as the platform cracked under him. "Move faster," Miller ordered. Step by step, jump by jump, they crossed the storm. Each leap felt like death itself waiting below. But humans had always been stubborn creatures, they never stopped moving forward. At last, the storm fell silent. The fire vanished, the winds died, and the chamber opened into a vast hall of black stone. A single doorway glowed at the far end. The voice spoke again, deeper, colder. "Final trial, the breaking of the mind." The hall twisted as they stepped inside. Walls melted, the floor stretched into infinity, and the air filled with voices. Sarah heard her mother calling her name, begging her to return home. James saw visions of friends he had lost in war, faces blaming him for their deaths. Captain Miller found himself standing back on Earth, the ocean before him, his old uniform heavy on his shoulders. A voice whispered in his ear, "You could have stayed. You could have lived. Why fight a test that does not matter?" The final trial was not strength. It was not speed. It was the mind. The test reached deep into their memories, pulling out guilt, fear, and regret. It broke empires not by killing bodies but by shattering souls. Billions watched in silence. Alien leaders leaned forward, expecting at last to see the humans fall. "This is where they break," whispered the Varnic elder. "No one can resist the mind trial," said the Zern ambassador. "They will beg for mercy, like all the rest." But inside the hall, something strange happened. Sarah closed her eyes, tears running down her cheeks. The vision of her mother reached for her hand. But instead of giving in, Sarah whispered, "I miss you, but I'm not done yet." She stepped forward, and the illusion cracked. James knelt before the ghosts of his fallen brothers. Their faces twisted with anger, but James smiled sadly. "I'll carry you with me. Always. But you're not chains. You're the reason I keep fighting." The ghosts vanished, replaced by light. Captain Miller stood before the ocean. The voice of temptation told him to rest, to forget, to go home. He looked at the waves one last time, then turned his back. Duty first. Humanity first. We finish what we start. The illusion shattered like glass. One by one, the humans broke free not by fighting the illusions, but by accepting them. By carrying their pain instead of letting it destroy them. The hall shook violently. The test had never seen this before. Species always begged for release. But the humans embraced their fears and kept moving forward. The voice thundered, louder than ever. "Impossible. No one has resisted. No one has completed. How do you endure?" Captain Miller raised his head. His voice was calm, steady, unbroken. "Because that's what humans do. We endure." The hall collapsed around them. The walls melted into pure light. The illusions screamed, then dissolved into silence. When the light faded, the humans stood in a chamber of stars. A massive gate, carved with unknown symbols, floated before them. It opened slowly, revealing the endless galaxy beyond. The voice spoke one last time, but now it trembled. "Final trial, complete." Across the stars, silence spread. Every broadcast froze as billions tried to process what they had just seen. Humans had done the impossible. They had passed the test. Sarah let out a breathless laugh. "That's it? After all that, we're done." James dropped onto the ground, still grinning. "Best practice session ever." Captain Miller looked into the glowing gate, his eyes hard. "The galaxy will never be the same after this." In the council chambers, alien leaders argued in panic. Some shouted for alliances. Others whispered of war. But all agreed on one truth. If humans could pass the test that terrified the galaxy, then there was nothing they could not survive. For the first time in thousands of years, the galaxy was no longer afraid of the test. It was afraid of the ones who passed it. The galaxy went silent. Billions had watched the humans pass every trial of the test, trials that had destroyed empires, trials that had broken species beyond repair. And now, for the first time in history, the test was complete. Not only complete, but conquered. The humans did not crawl out in fear. They did not weep or beg for release. They walked out laughing, tired but proud, as if they had finished a long training drill. To humanity, it was practice. To the galaxy, it was a nightmare. On Earth's fleet ship Valor, Captain Miller stood before the viewing window. Beyond the glass stretched the endless stars, brighter than ever. His crew gathered around him: Sarah, James, Dr. Harris, and others who had stood through the impossible and survived. Sarah leaned back against the wall, still catching her breath. "I can't believe that was the end. It feels like we just beat the universe's final exam." James chuckled, rolling his shoulders. "And we didn't even study." The crew laughed, but Miller's face stayed serious. He knew what this meant. The galaxy had been watching. The galaxy would never forget. And he was right. On the Varnic homeworld, the elder who had once mocked humans now trembled before his council. "We called them reckless. We called them children. But children do not pass the test. Only monsters could." On Zern Prime, the ambassador gave a warning speech. "They have done what no one else could. If humanity sees war as another test, who will stop them?" Across hundreds of worlds, panic mixed with awe. Some species cheered for the humans, seeing them as heroes who broke the galaxy's curse. Others whispered in fear, calling them Deathworlders, a species too stubborn to die, too curious to quit. Back aboard the Valor, Dr. Harris sat at his console, reviewing data from the test. His hands shook as he whispered, "We've changed everything. The test wasn't meant to be passed. It was meant to judge us. To measure us." Sarah tilted her head. "So what's the verdict?" Harris looked up slowly. "That humanity is dangerous." A message soon arrived from the Galactic Council. Their faces appeared on the screen: dozens of alien leaders, their expressions tense. The council chamber was filled with fear. One of them spoke, voice trembling. "Humanity of Earth. You have completed the test. You know what this means. The galaxy will never be the same. What do you want?" The council expected demands. They expected threats. Perhaps even war. But Captain Miller simply gave a small smile. His voice was calm, but carried the weight of steel. "What do we want? Nothing, except the truth. You hid the test because you feared it. We faced it because that's what we do. If that was your hardest challenge, then we're ready for more." The galaxy shook at those words. Because in that moment, every leader realized something chilling: the test had not measured humanity's strength. It had measured their nature. And what it revealed was a species that did not break. A species that turned terror into training. On Earth, the news spread like wildfire. Humanity celebrated not just because they had survived, but because they had proven themselves. For the first time, they were not seen as newcomers or children. They were seen as the ones who conquered the unconquerable. James raised a glass in the mess hall that night. To humanity. To practice runs that scare the galaxy. The crew roared with laughter, clinking glasses together. Sarah leaned close to Miller and whispered, "Do you think they'll ever stop underestimating us?" Miller's eyes narrowed as he looked out at the stars. "No. And that's their mistake." But beyond the laughter, beyond the victory, the galaxy itself had changed. Empires began drafting new strategies. Armies trained harder. Secret alliances formed. Because deep inside, every alien leader knew the truth. If humans could pass the test, they could survive anything. and if they could survive anything, then nothing in the galaxy could truly stop them. In the dark of space, as the Valor prepared for its next mission, Captain Miller left one final message for the Council. His words echoed across the stars, unforgettable, unshakable. Your test was never our enemy. It was just another obstacle. And we don't fear obstacles. We pass them. We always pass them. The transmission ended. Silence followed. And then, across 1,000 worlds, the whisper spread again. The test did not terrify the humans. The humans terrified the test.